So, Stephen D here on Pure 24/7 Radio, and I am joined by one of the writers for Pure Media, the magazine. Hello, Karen Ferguson.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm used to chatting to Nathan all the time, so I just paused there and nearly said, "Hi, Nathan," by mistake. I'm so sorry.
No worries. That's absolutely fine. So, we're here to talk about your column in the magazine. Do you want to start by telling us what it is you get up to?
So on a professional basis, what I get up to is I run something called the Maven Club. And the idea behind the Maven Club is to really give support and a lot of free resources and encouragement to primarily entrepreneurs. So people that have got an idea for something, that might be a business or a charity or just a concept. And my role at the Maven Club is to try to help them take that from a concept into a reality. And so I love to help people get going, but then help them to keep growing. So what I often find is that people will get their thing going, they'll have some success, then they need to build a team. And then there's a whole set of new things that they're trying to learn and juggle. So the Maven Club is there to support people and really just to bring out their gifts and their talent, but also a huge focus on well-being because when you're entrepreneurial, it can be quite lonely sometimes, and it's quite easy to almost turn on yourself. So a lot of what we do is focus on their own well-being and their balance and putting boundaries and making sure they've got people, good people around them. So in a nutshell, that's what the Maven Club does. And it looks very different on a day-to-day basis from doing one-to-one sessions with people to doing bespoke projects. And sometimes it's sort of doing webinars or writing resources. It's quite different. And of course, I love the opportunity to write for Pure Media magazine. And then I also like to catch up with Nathan every week to do a little wellbeing slot on his show as well.
Yes. So, I understand well-being is quite a passion of yours.
Yeah, it is actually. And I think the reality is that in a world now that we live in with increased loneliness and increased mental health concerns, looking after our well-being and kind of calling it out and prioritizing it to me is an essential part of us coping in this very fast-paced world that we live in, where we're getting exposure to so many things and information just never stops coming our way. And it's very easy to go down slippery slopes. So I really do feel very passionate about helping people to just stop and reflect and think and look after themselves, because when we look after ourselves, we get to give others the best version of ourselves. And sometimes it can't happen because of external things or because of, mental health issues and that type of thing. You can have really very difficult seasons, but being proactive in our looking after our well-being to me is something that we can all take part in. And it's helpful also to notice others around us so that we're a little bit more aware of when we need to just get alongside people and encourage them.
Absolutely. So, that brings us rather nicely onto your column in Pure Media, the magazine. Do you want to tell us what inspired your latest article? It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, which, as you mentioned earlier, I'm having a hard time not singing as I say it out.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll spare you trying to, but in my head, I'm humming it right now. Um, it was quite recently actually. The other day, probably a couple of weeks ago, I sort of was suddenly out somewhere and felt, oh, we're just surrounded by all the Christmas stuff now and hearing the songs on the radio and that. And for me, Christmas has always been a rather pleasant time of year. But I do know that for many, it's a really big challenge. It can be really, really hard. But one of the things that I just felt, and what probably inspired the article, is that the emphasis can be so much on things and stuff and gifts and activity and sometimes gluttony as well. And I wanted to kind of bring it back to the simplicity of that very first Christmas, but also that theme of generosity and how generosity can turn up in ways that doesn't involve, getting your wallet out. It's so much more meaningful just to be aware. So that was kind of what inspired me, just that sense of, oh, it's here and it's quite hectic and it's quite commercialized at times. And let's strip it back and let's think about the people in this season.
Excellent. I love that. So with that in mind, what do you want people to kind of take away from this? What do you want people to be thinking about?
Well, my hope is that people are able to just pause and almost think about what does matter to them and not get caught up in some of the festivities that can sometimes bring out the worst in us. So for some people it can be very difficult because it becomes very comparative and there's that sense of how much you're spending or what you need to do or what you must be at or and that type of thing, and it can rob you of some of the joy. So there is that awareness around what does this season really mean to you and what matters to you in this time. But then there's also that awareness that, like I say, for some people this is a really difficult time. It's not full of joy. um, but when we go back to that first Christmas and we see the generosity that's built out, yes, that was in a very um, physical way, if you like. It was the gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. But that word gold just came to my mind, thinking, well, there's gold, there's hidden treasure in everybody. What are we doing to try to notice that and to call that out and bring attention to that? What does it mean to just be generous in our words and our presence this time? So for some, that is about making fabulous memories, having a laugh. Traditionally, my family, we've always done lots of board games at Christmas, and I love that and the competitiveness that brings out. I used to, when my girls were little, we would always make a Boxing Day pie with all the leftovers. And it's kind of one of those traditions that we've created that now they're all adults, that's a significant part of their Christmas. And so there are all these beautiful things that we can do that just sort of bring out the treasure of belonging and the connections that we can have and those memories that are priceless. But there's also that presence that we can bring that just is aware for those that maybe this is a harder time, and what can kind words and encouragement do, and how can we be generous with just being present and loving people in this season. So our generosity, I don't want that to be limited to Christmas, but sometimes there is that sense of what are we seeking and what matters to us, and how are we noticing what's happening around us. And then finally, and this probably comes from the work I do, and I have to tell myself this as well, but often we can be generous to others, but we can be hard on ourselves. And so, what does it look like to be generous towards yourself this Christmas? What does that look like? Does that mean taking some time out? Does it mean perhaps actually reflecting and calling to mind the things that you're gifted in or the things that are your strengths? What does it mean to be nice to yourself, to give yourself a break, to let yourself off something not being perfect? Or what does it look like to be generous to yourself? Because, like I say at the very end of that article, we have a heavenly Father that epitomizes generosity, and we're not always so quick to receive that. We can sometimes just talk ourselves out of why we don't deserve something, but He is so generous to us. And what does it mean for us to imitate that by being generous to ourselves and generous to others around us? So I hope that people get that sense, that spirit of generosity can look like a lot of different things, but the best type of generosity is being kind to yourself and to others.
Yeah, I really like what you said about generosity doesn't mean you have to get your wallet out. I love that. And I really like how you've brought that to the magazine. It's really encouraging. So thank you so much for what you've brought to this interview and to the magazine with your latest article. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks, Stephen. Have a fabulous Christmas, and remember to be generous to everyone you encounter.
Thank you.